Hi everyone, hope you're having a great Monday, and yes indeedy, I am doing a review. Today's review is going to be the Arteza Everblend markers. Now I know there are a lot of other reviews out there and so many of them are great. They go in depth about the colors and the markers themselves. My biggest thing that I wanted to review that I haven't come across casually looking at other reviews is their actual blending capability, because I mean they are called Everblend, right? So the assumption would be that they would blend well together. So today we are going to touch on the basics of the marker, the color availability, all of that, but I'm going to try to move quickly to the demonstration part to show you how these actually blend. So a couple weeks ago I was in a live stream and someone had mentioned there was a lightning deal on Amazon for the 120 set of the Arteza Everblend markers that come with their case. Typically it retails for about 120 US and it was down to around $78. So I snapped them up, been wanting them for a while, wasn't really willing to pay that much, but the $78 was highly appealing. So I managed to snag them for that, and I have been trying them out, so we've got plenty to talk about today. So as I'm sure you've seen with other reviews, man, I'm not having luck. This is like my third or fourth take on this. I'm sorry I knocked the mic over. It was loud, but anyway, you get the case with the 120 set. Right now there's no option to just buy the 120 set without the case. And keep in mind that the case can be bought separately. So if you get if you get the gray the gray tone set and the skin tone set, you can actually buy the case separately. The case itself is about $38 or $37 on their website. So keep that in mind, that like when you're buying the 60 or 120 set, it comes with a case. You don't have an option to go without it. So that like $40 of that, give or take, is for the case itself, the price you're paying. Mine is a little dirty because I've been doing a bunch of cleaning in here. I need to get a wet washcloth and wipe it off. But this is what the inside of the case looks like. A lot of my markers are missing because I've been pulling them out to use them. They do have individual slots in this marker case. It is a nice case. It's velcroed. It's got clips on it. The one thing I will note is that these little loops for the markers are really not very loose at all. It is a chore for me to get these markers back in this case. I'm hoping they loosen up over time, but if they don't, I'll probably wind up with a separate storage solution for my markers. So just keep that in mind. If you don't like wrestling with a case all that much, you might have a bit of a problem with these. So there is the case itself, and I just about dropped one of my markers. The markers themselves, quick look. They have the logo and the type of marker on the base, or on the actual marker itself. They are triangular. Each marker has a color number and color name on the cap, which is really nice. I like when companies do both the marker number and name. They come with a chisel tip and a fine or bullet tip. They are, if you want to see one in comparison to a Prismacolor, they're a little wider than a Prismacolor. Similar width to a Copic, but keep in mind they're triangular instead of round. And then a Blick Studio, just offhand, about the same. I mean, they're about an average size marker in terms of overall size. So, actually though, I want to look. Yeah, even the tips and stuff, the marker base that has the actual ink well in it, it runs very similar in length to other markers. So, has a little bit longer base than the Copic Sketch, actually. So, if you were curious about that. Alright, so let's get first into the price, since I know that is something that a lot of us want to focus on. I tried to make this bigger. This was about as big as I could get it, so we're gonna just move the camera at this point. Okay, there we go. you can pause, take a screenshot of this or whatever if you really need all the details. But basically, I took one of the marker sets that's not sold individually, individual markers, the Cali Arts, since those are well known, and I did put those in here. But in my opinion, the Artezas really, if you're looking at comparisons, compare more to the higher end markers like your Copics, your Prismacolors, and your Blick Studios, because they are sold individually to a point, and there are like replacement nibs and stuff. So these tip more into, honestly, these are a mid-range marker, and well, no, I put them on the mid to higher end range. Like I said, they kind of fit more into your higher range markers, but with the price of them, they're actually very budget friendly type markers. So just looking at this, the price per marker doesn't take into account sales or anything like that. I basically just tried to pull the basic retail price of the markers, calculating them, you know, where they're sold individually, and then this was just the 100 set. They currently run for about $40. So your Cali Arts are about 40 cents. They're, you know, really down there in terms of budget friendly markers. Your Copic Sketch are on your high end. Those are a chisel and a brush tip, so they are slightly different. The rest of these are chisel and fine tip. The Artezas, because of the way they're sold, it's hard to get an individual marker price, because some of the sets you're forced to buy the case with it, some of the sets you're not. If you buy the individual color, you have to buy them in sets of 4. There's a cat meowing, and I don't know why. Hopefully it's nothing critical. But anyway, when I was trying to calculate the price, I essentially came up between 70-80 cents to close to $1 if you count in the case for like the 120 sets. So they're under $1 a marker. So when you're looking at those, the next one up is your Blick Studio markers in price, and that's a pretty significant price jump per marker. So the Artezas are very budget friendly in terms of what you're looking at, where they sit in the range of markers. In a way, to me, they kind of sit on their own, and I'll explain more of why in a minute. Replacement nibs, here's all the info on that. They do offer replacement nibs for Arteza. No ink refills. You have to buy the actual marker refill. That might be, for some of you that are like environmentally conscious, that might be an issue. Sold individually. So the Artezas are sold individually. You can go to their site, and you can, if you run out of one type of marker, you can go to their site and get that marker, except they're sold in sets of 4. So you have to pay $8, or how did I calculate that? Boy, that wasn't right. Like $2 marker or something. You can buy replacements, but right now all the colors are not there. I can just look at the scroll down list and tell you not all the colors are there. So their stock of replacement markers are limited at this point. I think they'll probably expand that in the future, but just keep that in mind right now. If you do have a marker you like to use a lot, maybe go ahead and go there and look and make sure they do offer that marker. So it's kind of, they do offer the individual markers, but it is kind of limited. Notes on all this: the case is included in the 60 and 120 sets. They do not offer this separately at this point, which is a bummer. They do have other sets available. One of the downsides to the Artezas is that you can't just buy all the markers they have available in one big set. The 120 set does not include every single marker they have available, because there are some extra markers that are available in the gray set and in the skin tone set. So you have to buy the 120 set and the other 2 sets to get the full color variety available, which sucks in my opinion, because then you're getting some overlap as well. So then you're getting duplicate markers to be able to do that, and that is a big drawback. I do not like that. So anyway, they're kind of hanging in between the higher end markers and then your mid-range markers like your Cali Arts. They're kind of in a class of their own. So with the case, you do get this little swatch chart. I pulled mine off the case, but they do offer you a little swatch chart, which is really nice. It is glossy, so I apologize for the glare. It does come with a colorless blender, which is nice. And then there's that on that side. I tried to use this in picking out colors, and I guess because they were so small squares, I was like, I gotta make my own. So that is what I did. Made my own swatch chart. This swatch chart comes from coloringbliss.com. It's Jennifer Stays. I use it pretty much for all my markers at this point. So I'm going to give you a quick look at these. I just put in the numbers and not the color names because that was a lot to write down. So there's that, and it is a 120 set. What I'll note in the color chart, a lot of reds and pinks, which is awesome. Definitely nothing wrong with that. You get a fair amount of blues, fair amount of greens. You get a crazy, in my opinion, crazy amount of grays in this, if you look. Now some of these are a little more neutral and some of these are more of like a dark brown or whatever, but you know, you've got grays running. You've got a very large variety of grays in this set. If you like grays, which makes sense if you're doing blending and you're using some grays to create shading and stuff like that, it makes sense to have that. If you're a huge fan of grays, this might be a great set for you. If you would rather have more like blues and greens to choose from, then maybe not this set. They add a fair amount of yellows too, and yellow oranges. Not a whole lot of oranges though, regular oranges though, so not a whole ton of browns either. So just a quick note there. I do have other swatch charts. So like my Prismacolor set's only a 72 set. That's kind of what that one looks like. You don't get quite as many reds, and definitely not as many grays. My Copic set, you get a fair amount of reds and pinks. Whoops. You get a lot of blues. This is the Copic set A, by the way. It's a 72 set as well. So you get quite a few blues in this. A few blues, a good amount of grays, and then a whole lot of, fair amount of reds, not too many. Like Studio, nothing really, when you look at these, like nothing really compares to the offerings in the Arteza set. They do seem to offer a different variety of colors than you would get in your other sets. Like the Cali Arts, you have plenty of greens to choose from, not a good amount of grays, but not too many, a good amount of browns, but not a ton of reds or pinks. So just as a quick glance at the other ones, there's no other brand that really compares to this one in terms of the color offerings. Like I said, the amount of reds and pinks are usually high anyway, but they're usually high in the Everblends. Same with the grays. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, but if those are the colors that you really like to use, I think this will give you a really nice variety to choose from. This is just the 120 set. This does not cover the skin tone set or the gray tone set. Those are the other two sets that are available, and they are $30 for 36 right now. There is some overlap between the sets. You do have, I think, quite a bit of overlap with the grays set, not a lot of overlap in the skin tone set. And as you can see here, you don't have a whole lot of skin tones to choose from in this one. So I will probably get the skin tone set separately because I want those, but the gray set, I don't need any more grays. I have plenty of grays to choose from at this point. So, okay, now, not too bad, 15 minutes, give or take. Now we're going to get to the main event, which a lot of you probably want to see. First off, we're going to take a look at straight coloring. Now, let me zoom back out while I'm doing this. What I did was I used these markers to color in Amazon printed paper books and a Creative Haven book, which I would classify as a lesser quality paper with the Amazon printed paper, and then a medium quality with Creative Haven. Now, I'm not going to show how these do on a higher end book like a color book, which typically has specific marker paper. And the reason why is because it would make this longer. And secondly, if we can achieve blends and straight colors, if you can see how this performs on paper that sucks in the ink and dries quickly, like your lower quality marker your lower quality paper for markers, if you can see how it performs here, then you know it'll perform better on the paper that's more marker friendly. So I'm just kind of showing you the basics on the lower end, and then, you know, obviously, you know, the performance will increase as you move to higher quality paper specifically for markers. So your smoother papers will obviously perform better than what you see here and in the Creative Haven book. This is Little Witches by Sun Life Drawing. I have not done a flip through of this yet. I just got this last week, and this is quickly becoming one of my favorites to color while I'm working. Or not working. Boy, that'd be bad, wouldn't it? No, while I'm watching TV. If I can work and color, man, I am really achieving something there, let me tell you. So, I show you these other pictures because they use... This first page used a Prismacolor for the background. It was a Prismacolor marker. And then the rest of them are a combination of Prismas and then like your Sharpies, your Bics. Same here. I think I used a shuttle art, or for the background you do see a little bit of streaking there. This is again the same types of markers, and same here. The green in the background is a Sharpie, and there's surprisingly no streaks on that one. So why am I showing you all this? Because one of the ways people like to use markers is to straight color, and one of the things that's really annoying about markers when you straight color large areas like this is the streaks that can be left behind if you don't work quickly. So I did start this picture, and this one I'm using the Everblends as a straight color. I've already started the background, and as you can see, I work relatively quickly when I color with these, and as you can see, there is some streaking happening. Trying to make it a little easier to see. Is this an easier way to see? Not really. Okay. Sorry, it is cloudy today. We're going to get some rain here in a little bit, so there is a little bit of streaking here and here. And these are just where the paper is dried before I've been able to go back over it with a marker. So there is some streaking with these markers. Now, I left a little bit of it for us to go ahead and fill in so you can kind of see. I'm just going to zoom in with the camera. And I didn't want to do the whole page. I'm using the chisel tip. This is a nice straight edge chisel tip, as opposed to, say, the Prismacolor Premiers. They have a really fat kind of chisel tip to them. So these are really good for going right up to the edge of the lines. I am getting more and more comfortable with using my chisel tip markers. I tend to go with the fine or bullet tip. Just because these little edges like this can be hard to fill in, but with these markers it is actually pretty easy to do if you carry a light touch. These are a little squeaky. I don't hear it as much on this marker and this tip, but I have had on the fine tip, I've had some squeaking happen. Not a huge deal for me, it doesn't bother me, but some people may have a real issue with the squeaky noises. So they do not smell that strong. Definitely not like a Sharpie. Like when you take the cap off a Sharpie, if you're anywhere close to it within a few minutes, you know you've taken that edge off that Sharpie. You've taken that cap off that Sharpie. But I don't get a strong whiff of alcohol off of these. So, good news for those of you that might be sensitive to smell. As you can see, I try to work relatively quickly when I'm filling in large areas like this, or continuous areas. The chisel tip does help fill it in faster to provide less opportunity for streaks. This is Amazon printed paper. Now, Amazon printed paper soaks up marker very quickly and it dries very quickly. So if you want to know if a marker is going to streak on you, this is the best paper in my opinion to test it on, because this is going to dry faster than a lot of the other papers out there will. So I started at edges that had already dried and then went on through. Actually here, is this the same one? Yeah. Alright, might as well go ahead and fill in these little areas here. Actually, let's get the fine tip out so you guys can see that. Now this will be the only example I show of straight coloring with these markers. As you can see how it goes a lot slower when you switch the fine tip. And the fine tip definitely is drier than the chisel tip. I'm having to kind of go back over it to make sure the color is thorough. That is not unusual for alcohol markers. Obviously your fine tip's going to have a firmer tip to it. It's a smaller tip, so you're not going to get quite as much color and ink distribution. So we're going to switch back over to the chisel tip, and you see how much faster you can fill that in. So these are great if you're a chisel tip lover. I've been able to use the fine tips without a lot of problems. But anyway, like I said, you can kind of see the difference here. Let me grab another marker real quick so you can see a different color. This is a fun little book. There. You can get, you're hearing a little bit of that squeakiness right there. I'm going to go ahead and fill in all of these spaces. No, I'm not. That's a lot of extra space to fill in. Okay, no problem. I can fill it in later. Like I said, we're trying to keep this fairly fairly quick. Here is my sky blue. Not that. So it's got to be that marker. Yep. So we're going to do the light blue here on the mirror, so you can see how lighter color does. If you're concerned about streaking, lighter colors tend to streak easier than darker colors, or they're more noticeable, at least in my opinion. Like I said, I'm really comfortable with the chisel tips in this marker set. I don't know if it's just having to learn to use them, but I feel like I'm a lot more comfortable using these than I am in some other marker brands. And like I said, I think it's because of the clean edge to them. Now again, keep in mind that the Amazon printed paper loves to suck up ink, so your length of time with these markers may be shortened if you use them solely for like Amazon printed paper as opposed to, say, colored paper. So just something to keep in mind. And here is the fine tip on the lighter blue color. Trying to find anywhere else that's got a small area for the 10. I'm going to have to write these down so I remember. This one, the fine tip feels a little more, like it's got a little more ink to it. These are brand new markers too. It may just take using them. Like I've been using the sky blue in other books compared to the Mykonos blue that I was using out here, which is like one of my favorite colors of all brands of markers, colored pencils, what have you. I love that Mykonos blue. It is beautiful. So there it is, kind of from a straight color perspective. Like I said, any type of usage on the Amazon paper, you're probably going to have a slightly shorter life on your markers than you would if you were using specifically marker paper. Now, we're going to look at Amazon printed paper again. Zoom out. Whoop. This is Cute Witches by Jade Summer. Now, we're going to get into what I think is the real feature of these markers, because they are called Everblend, right? So, I want to see how they're going to blend. Will they blend? Sorry, I don't know if you get that reference or not, but it's Cute Witches by Jade Summer. I started this yesterday while watching the Classic World Tetris Championships. Here is that picture. I was blending with the markers on this paper. Couple things to note. Well, I'll note it as we're coloring. So I got the fireplace done, and again, all this was blended using just the Everblend markers. So I think it turned out beautifully. They blend really well, even on Amazon paper. Now you got to work with them a little bit because of how quickly this paper dries. You got to work at it, but you can get these to blend. Now, why am I sitting here staring into space? Here we go. These were my markers. Now, how am I blending? What am I blending, and what are we going to do? So we're going to blend. We're going to use a 3-color blend right here. These are all blues. I want to use blue on her, don't want to use, see, I'm tossing it between blue and green. You know, we're going to do blue on the chair. Let's just change. I'm going to change right here. We're using, if you're curious, denim blue, Mykonos blue, of course, and Agent blue. Now, one thing I want to note about these markers, you notice I took one cap off. Now, what I generally like to do is take both off, because when I'm blending and I'm getting in the small crevices, I want to quickly be able to flip my marker and be able to use the fine tip to get into the smaller spaces. Now, here's my problem. The barrel of the marker does not have the color name nor the number on it anywhere. So let's say I have a set of 3 markers like this. I take caps off on one side and I want to take the caps off the other. Now if I do that for all 3 markers and then I go back to put the caps on, I'm going to have to be really good at color matching against the marker base because there's no name on it. So if I could put the caps back on the wrong markers if I'm not careful. And that really sucks for me because, like I said, I like to use both while I'm coloring. So what I'm going to try to do to avoid that myself is to make sure I put these in an order. So we'll go light, medium. Actually, we're going to switch that. I usually start with my darkest one first. So we'll go with dark, medium, and light. Okay. So let me zoom in. I'm going to work on this chair just a little bit. So like right here, I want to use, on this part of the chair, I'm going to use the fine tip. And then I'm going to start with the darkest and move to the medium color. Now, Amazon printed paper, you have to work quickly. So I might end up working in small batches instead of going across the whole paper. So like that. I put that on the end of my 3 once I get done, so I just rotate through them. And as long as I make sure I do that, now I'm coming back in with a medium color and I'm just going over the edge of the darker color to blend them. Again, Amazon paper dries very quickly, and you may have to work with it a little bit. Now we're going to go in with the lightest. There's not a huge difference between the three colors, but that was the way I wanted it. I didn't want super light areas on the chair. So here we go back in with our darkest. Because this paper dries quickly, like I said, you want to work quickly with it, which is what I'm doing here. And to add an extra little blend, I'll go back over everything with the lightest color just to make sure it all ties together. Now, like I said, that's kind of a subtle blend, but you can see the difference in the colors, the gradual difference, which is exactly what I wanted. I didn't want super light spots on this chair. I want more of a rich texture like what I have with the bricks themselves. So, so there is that. One thing I will also note, as you can see on here, is the more marker you use, the more the paper is going to suck the marker in, and that can cause some problems when you're up against the edge on certain items. So you notice there is some bleeding that has happened, and I forgot that spot. I got to go back and fix that. There is some bleeding that's happening on some of these items. Even some of these little sparkles have been the marker has bled into. Now, the way I fix that is I'll go back with gel pen. You probably could use fewer layers to blend with if that's a problem for you and that really annoys you, but for me, see this chisel tip on this darkest, this denim blue is dry, but it is fixing itself as I continue on. So it's just the newness of the marker, I think, for a lot of this. So we're switching around to the chisel tip for this, so I can kind of show you the different. Since we've been using the chisel tip on the Mykonos blue, you see how smooth that is coming through. Like I said, they may seem a little dry from the get-go, but if you haven't been using them yet, just work with them. They'll get there. Right. Blending with markers does take some patience. In some ways, it is quicker than blending with pencil because you're not using as many layers. But when you have quick drying paper like this, actually I would react this way to any of the paper quality, just because I would want to make sure my blends are thorough. And the less layers I have to lay down of the colors, the less bleeding that's going to happen. So you have more time on marker friendly paper. You have more time than you do, say, in this, with this type of paper. Let me see something real quick. Okay, yeah, we're right. See, there for a minute, I was concerned that I got my markers out of order. So, again, Arteza, if you're watching, please, please put the name of the marker, or the number, it doesn't matter really, on the barrel of the marker, so that if you take both caps off, like I did, you can easily put them all back together if you're using multiple markers, like in this case, to shockingly blend. That is a big negative for me if I want to use these to blend. That really, like I said, I have to be way more careful about blending when I do that. You can see a little bit of the lines up there, but keep in mind I'm also going to go back over with the lightest blue one more time over this whole section, and that should help cut that line out a little bit. Now, does this use up a lot of marker? Yeah, I would imagine it uses up quite a bit. This is going to, again, if you do a lot of blending on Amazon paper or straight coloring, the life of your marker will be shortened just because of the amount of ink it's consuming, but that's where hopefully replacements for all the different colors comes into play. Okay, so now we have our lightest color. I am going to go back over everything. I probably put more pressure on my marker than I should, but I try not to let it just sit there and soak into the paper. I try to, boy, I hope that's the lightest color. Oh well. Of course it's going to be darker when it first comes on here, but then as it dries, it will lighten up. So I'm just going to go over one more layer. And this, as it dries, should lessen the sharp lines that you're seeing. Well, they're not sharp, but the super obvious looking lines. So yeah, you, again, not as obvious of a difference, but it is there. Let me make sure I put my caps back on my right markers, at least I hope I am. That's medium color. So yeah, big issue for me. It's not a deal breaker, but it is kind of a PITA, and you can go look that up if you're wondering what that stands for. So we're going to wait a little bit, let that dry, and I'll show you how that looks when it dries completely. Finally, we are going to move to Creative Haven. Autumn Scenes coloring book. I started one in here as well. This is part of my next color and chat series. I've already recorded part 1, and we'll be working on this picture in there, though I will do a small part of it today just to show you guys how these blend, will they blend in these books. So this is the page I've been working on. This is all Everblend markers, and all of it is, there's no straight coloring in this. This is all different color markers that have been blended together so far. The sky turned out gorgeous. I love it. You can see a little bit of the lime, but it's not bad. You get a lot better blend with the colors of the trees. The apples turned out gorgeous, and so far I am highly pleased with how these work in the Creative Haven books. So let me get, what are we going to do first? We're going to do the squirrel first. So again, I think in this case, because these are smaller items here, I am going to use the fine tips on these just to make sure. Now the fine tip on this marker can always be, you can always find it quickly. The line of color is there, and there's also, you've got the little fine tip there. I kind of look at it like an arrow. So you can quickly tell which end is the fine tip by doing that. For this, we are using burgundy, cinnamon, and sienna brown, which was a combo I used in the fireplace in the Jade Summer book, and as you can tell, it came out really nice. So again, we're going to do the 3 color combo, and we'll start with the darkest first, and we're just going to quickly switch between these and try to get our blend going. Now with this paper, it does not dry as quickly as the Amazon printed paper, but it is still, it is not a slowly drying type of paper, so I would not let it linger too long. if it were me. Like I said, even if the paper takes time to dry, I try to work quickly just to make sure. Trying to think if there's anything else in particular I haven't mentioned about these already. I think we've pretty much covered everything I've noticed about these markers. Now these, I may go over the entire thing again, and I may not. In this case I will, because it looks like it creates a little bit better blend. So, alright, we'll move on to the body of Mr. Squirrel, or Fuzzy Rat, as I'm sure some of you like to refer to them. Like I said, I didn't want to do too much of this picture because I am using this in the coloring chat, but I did want to do a couple things just to be able to show y'all. So how will I end up using these markers? I will be using these markers more for blends. I have been wanting for a while to get back into marker blending. I haven't been doing it very much. Trying to figure out what's squirrel and what's the nut. Squirrels are nuts. So I guess that's something I don't need to be super concerned about. But how will I personally use these markers? I will use these more for blending than I probably will straight coloring. Just because they do blend very nicely. They're not shocking to my budget, but I am a little iffy about the not the full complement of markers are available to be replaced at this point, and I hate to run out of them and then one not be available for me, at least until they get the full stock in. That might change at that point. So there we go. One squirrel. Let's move to the next one. I don't usually go for real, as you can tell, I go more for the subtle blends than I do the super bright blends. But because this is an autumn scenes picture, to me, the richer tones, there's more of a cry for richer tones in this picture too. So I'm really enjoying this picture, by the way. I'm enjoying the Cute Witches picture. Like, I'll be honest, I was impressed at how well they blended on that paper. Blending on Amazon printed paper is not easy by any stretch. And you have to work with them a little, but it's not as difficult as I thought it would be. So I'm just going ahead and doing the whole squirrel here, or most of them at a time, just because these are such smaller spaces. And I do get a little more. Now, one thing to keep in mind when you are using markers, let's say you straight color with them and you use a lighter color and you get streaks and you don't like it, you can always go back over it on a second layer. That second layer, because it's already going over a layer of marker that's already there, takes a lot longer to dry. So if you're trying to work a blend, like in this case, I still don't like this little line here. I'm going to go back over it a little bit. that will create a little more of a blend, and it also takes longer to dry. So again, you can work at it a little bit. It's definitely using up your marker. So you gotta kind of weigh what's more important to you, burning up the marker or getting that blend just right. Smaller areas like this, I'm okay with going back over them a lot because again, it's a smaller space to be working in, so you're not using as much marker. My squirrels. We don't get too many. For some reason, I don't have a ton of squirrels in my backyard. Well, considering all the not my cats, that's probably why, but go back over a little bit with the other brown. So there are the squirrels. Now we're going to move down to the pumpkins because I think we'll see the color a little bit more in the pumpkins. Plus, this is the last one I'm doing, so yeah, this is run a little long, but in the grand scheme of things, it's actually not as long as I thought it was going to be, so I'm feeling pretty good about it. You got to kind of weigh, you know, actually showing you guys what these do versus, for these, I'm using vermilion, pumpkin orange, and sunflower yellow. If you have other Arteza products, like let's say you have the colored pencils or the real brush pens, some of the colors do match, but because there are so many more of these markers available, you're gonna get some new colors too. So and let's go with the sunflower yellow. Now, you can leave it like that, and like I said, you get that real solid highlight there. It's like you get that big color pop difference, but me, like I said, I want more of a gradual, richer look. So I'm just going to go ahead and work it in with the other colors. There. So that gives me a little more of a natural, gradual blend. So yeah, in terms of, you know, them being called Everblend markers and actually them blending, they are pretty darn good at it, in my opinion. And that's what I will likely be using these for. I think if you like to straight color mostly, if you wanted, let's say I like the straight color and I wanted a marker that I could go and buy the individual markers without having to buy the whole set, these would be, I think, the best budget friendly one you could get. But if you are somebody that straight colors and you're not like, if you run out of one marker, you're not like just, you can use other colors, and it's not like you have to have that marker on its own, and you can just buy the set again in the future when you run out of a certain number of them. I would go with a more budget friendly, like Sharpies or Cali Arts or something like that. You may not be able to buy them individually, but I think they're a better deal overall if you're straight coloring. If you want to move into blending with markers, but you don't want to pay Prismacolor and Copic prices, I think these are a good next level marker to go with if you're really looking into getting some blending done. And here I am getting kind of hog wild with the markers. like me. I want to get more into blending. I do have some Copics. I do love my Prismacolors, but I also really like how these blend. And I mean, the price difference between, these are not Copics. They're not, I'm not going to sit here and tell you they're just like Copics, that they blend just like Copics, and they work just like them. I'm not going to tell you that. But they certainly aren't Copic prices, and I think for their price, they are a good buy if you like to blend with markers. So yeah, in a nutshell, if you like to blend with markers, these are a good choice. If you would rather mostly straight color, I think you'd be better off with, because you're going to run through those markers more, you'd probably be better off with a little more budget friendly marker, though these are definitely an ideal choice if you're wanting to move up a little. Like I said, they're kind of in their own little zone, because they're way more budget friendly than your higher end markers, but they don't, because they have replacement nibs and replacement markers and stuff, they don't quite fit into that mid-range budget friendly marker category. So these are kind of out on their own for me. I'm glad I waited on the lightning deal for them. If you can get a deal on them, great. But they are performing far better than I expected. Had I known they performed this well with blending, and had I been wanting to get into blending sooner, I would have purchased these a lot sooner. So there are the pumpkins. Let me zoom out. And not my thing off. So you can see, like I said, everything on here has been blended with the Everblend markers. I'm sorry to say Prismacolor. Come on, Michelle. Everything on here has been blended with the Everblend markers, and my plan is to do that for the remainder of it. And if I need to, I might bring in some Arteza Real Brush pens, but this is all going to be Arteza products, so we will definitely say that. So yeah, this turned out really pretty. Like I said, I love the blend that came out on the apples too. Let me show you the other stuff that has hopefully dried. Dryish. Here is the dried chair that we were working on. Again, you can see a little bit of a line still, but I'm not that concerned with it. It's definitely not a harsh line, and you can definitely see, if I zoom in a little, you can see the shading difference. It's a little more slight on this. I probably should have went a little deeper with that mid color, but I'm pretty happy with that. So you can see the overall shading for that, especially on the fire itself. I used 4 or 5 different markers to get that blend on the flames. So this is going to be an awesome picture. I'm actually enjoying this a lot as well. I don't know if it'll be entirely marker. I may throw in some gel pen to, like I said, on Jade Summer paper you can blend. Jade Summer paper, Amazon printed paper, you can blend, but the more ink you put on the paper, the more it'll bleed into the surrounding areas. So if you have something you can cover that up with later and you don't care, then I say go for it. And then here is this one where it dried. I didn't have, looks like really any streaks with the light blue. It did very well. You do, again, still see some marks, a little bit of streak where the dark blue was done. I think they work just fine for straight coloring, but I don't think they perform any better than, say, Cali Arts or Shuttle Arts or anything like that. So performance-wise on straight coloring, I think you aren't going to get any extra performance out of these. But if you're blending, I think you will. So there is that. Hopefully that gives you a little idea of how these work. It's starting to become an issue where I'm having to put in papers in the front and back to keep it from bleeding. I'm really going to have to, I think, start using fixatives. Okay, So final thoughts on this while we are under an hour here. There we go. So Arteza Everblend markers. Pros, mid-range, mid-range price for markers. My camera really does not like text. I have figured this out. Yeah, you see what it's doing with the autofocus, right? That's just crazy. There we go, that'll work. So pros, mid-range price for markers. Like I said, they're kind of in their own price category because they're more expensive than like your CaliArts and your sets like that, but they are definitely way cheaper than your Blix, your Prismas, and your Copics. The case the big marker case is available with the 60 and 120 sets or as a separate purchase. There are different sets available. You have the 60, the 120, you have the gray tone set, and the skin tone set. They do blend well on different types of paper. You saw how they blended on paper that wasn't so marker friendly, so they, you know, again, the higher quality of the paper, the better they're going to blend. So if you can see how they perform on the lower quality paper, then you know they're going to perform well on the higher quality if they perform well on, you know, Amazon printed paper. Marker nib replacements are available. There's a great variety of reds and pinks, grays and yellows. Good ink output. You also get fluorescent colors, which was something I didn't mention before. I noticed there was like a neon, can't really see it, neon yellow. You get a neon orange here somewhere. There it is. So you do get a few fluorescent colors, which is nice. There. So there are those. That's cool. Cons, you can't buy the full 60, 120 sets without the case. That is a little annoying. Like I said, because of the tight loops in the case, if I'm using these a lot, if I find I'm using them a lot, I'm probably going to buy a separate storage solution for them. But it would have been really nice to have those sets without the case offering, because you can buy the other separate sets without a case. Can't buy all available markers in one set. This is really annoying to me. This is like a biggie for me. Where is a red? Like, this right here is a biggie for me, and it really bothers me. I don't like the fact that if I want every marker they make available for this set, I'm going to have to buy the 120 set, I'm going to have to buy the gray tone set, and I'm going to have to buy the skin tone set. And when I do that, I'm going to wind up with duplicates. And no, I'm not pleased by that at all right now. Can only buy replacements in sets of 4. Not all colors currently available. Now, I didn't count them, but I can tell you if there's 120 plus colors available, there were not 120 colors in that drop down. So they may be that's probably something they're working on. Will probably change in the future, but just keep that in mind right now. And the sets of 4 kind of sucks. I mean, and you end up paying like $2 per marker because it's $8 for the set of 4. It may even be more than that per marker. So anyway, not particularly thrilled about that, but you can buy them separate. Can leave streaks on paper if you don't work quickly. We saw that with the straight coloring in the Amazon printed paper. I did not put a bullet here. Close enough. Limited number of oranges. You had a good variety of orange yellows, but just really only 2 oranges, the vermilion and the pumpkin orange. Markers can be squeaky. Again, not a huge con for me, but maybe for others. Color name is not on markers. So again, if I'm using multiple markers and I take the caps on both sides off all these, if I don't keep them in order and keep them straight, then I could wind up, these would be pretty easy to figure out, but if you have colors that are really close to each other, like these blues right here, it might be a real challenge to get the cap to the right marker with just that color to compare. So I would like to at least see the numbers on the markers. This is also a biggie for me. I threw my red back, didn't I? These two things really bother me. But what is my final verdict on it? I am going to buy them again. I do want the skin tone set because at the end of the day, they do what they advertise. They do blend, and they blend beautifully. I do like the variety of colors that are offered. Um, I can keep them sorted when I'm trying to blend with them. Like I said, that's a big pain for me, but it's not a deal breaker for me. I am, again, aggravated I can't buy all the available markers in one set. I do like that there are different offerings. Like, I don't need any more grays. I've got plenty of grays between these, and if you have other marker sets to complement these colors, like, I really don't think I need any other grays. But I would like the skin tones in these because I think I'll be blending quite a bit with these skin tones. So, anyway, I think these, like I said, if you like to blend with markers, I think these are a good buy, a very good buy. Very good buy, especially if you're just starting out blending with markers. This is a good option where you don't feel like you have to just be able to, you don't have to just run out and buy Copics or Prismacolors in order to be able to blend. You can blend with these markers, and these are very budget-friendly blendable markers. If you're straight coloring, just straight coloring, I feel like there are other sets that probably are a little more budget-friendly, but these will certainly work. So anyway, hope this was helpful. Again, it was a little long, but I'll try to put some timestamps in the description so that if you guys are looking for certain things, then you can just kind of bounce to them. Let me know if you want to see anything different with these, and I will, like I said, the color and chat for the Autumn Scenes page will start up on Wednesday, and we'll go from there. Thanks, guys, and bye for now.